When I got home from work, instead of a welcome back, my wife said, "We need to talk." Then, she looked down and said, "Please divorce me." I couldn't understand what my wife was saying. I had been busy with work, but I thought our marriage was good. However, when I heard her reasons, my mind went blank. My name is Harris Anderson. I'm a 33-year-old working in the sales department. 3 years ago, I married my wife, Ava, who was 5 years younger than me. We don't have any children yet. At the time, Ava was 25. She wanted some time to hang out with friends and to enjoy just the two of us before we started a family. Although we both wanted children eventually, my work was so demanding that we decided it would be difficult to support her during pregnancy and to take care of a child. I didn't want to put all the burden on Ava, so we agreed to wait until my work situation calmed down. 3 years into our marriage, I only had to do about 2 hours of extra work each day. However, my job started to involve more business entertaining. Especially on Friday and Saturday nights, I had to attend drinking parties. Sometimes, I got those on Sundays too. It wasn't every week, but there were a few business entertainings a month. Dates planned with Ava were sometimes canceled. She would say, "It's your job, so it can't be helped," and of course, I tried to make it up to her, but I felt bad that she always had to adjust to my schedule. At the very least, I wanted to make household chores easier for her, so I let her use whatever appliances she liked and encouraged her to have plenty of time for hobbies and friends to avoid stress. Ava had the means to be a stay-at-home wife, but she wanted to work a bit, so she took a part-time job with reduced hours. We spent a lot of time apart, but I thought our marriage was good. We talked before bed and shared laughs together. 3 years into our marriage, I started talking about having kids, moving from a life of 2 to a life of 3. Ava would say, "Someday." I thought it would be nice if our first child was born by the time Ava turned 30, but I also thought there was no need to rush since children are a blessing. We didn't fight, and once a month, we went on dates to places within our state or the neighboring state, building happy memories and looking forward to the joy of expanding our family. Then one night, instead of greeting me with welcome back at the door as usual, Ava was sitting in the living room with a serious look on her face. I tried to lighten the mood by saying, "I'm home." But instead of welcome back, she said, "We need to talk." Did something happen at work? That's what crossed my mind. Worried, I was about to place my hand on her shoulder and peer into her face, asking, "What's wrong?" "Please divorce me." And she calmly placed the divorce oath on the table. My mind went blank. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, something out of a drama I had only seen on TV. Why? As I said this, I searched my mind for any clues. Come to think of it, for the past 3 days, Ava had been saying, "I'm tired, I'll go to bed first," and went to sleep. Usually, we chat a bit before sleeping. But there was no sense of unease. I just thought she was tired. Did I do something to make you mad? Did I do something to you, Ava? I'm sorry, I didn't notice at all. Can you tell me what I did? I asked, apologizing. But Ava just looked down and shook her head. I had no idea what it could be. What do you mean by divorce? I want you to explain properly. I tried to calm my confused mind and asked in a calm tone. I can't do this anymore. I just want a divorce. I wished it was some mistake. Since when? Why? Why didn't you tell me before it came to this? There was no way I could stay calm. I bombarded her with questions, unable to grasp the situation. But she remained silent, lips sealed. It was pathetic, but I was shaking and my voice was tearful. Then Ava began to cry profusely. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's my weakness. You did nothing wrong. Then why? Both of our faces were wet with tears. After a moment of silence, Ava gently placed her hand on her stomach. "There's a child in my belly." I felt a heavy stone drop in my mind. She had just found out about the pregnancy. Normally, this would be joyous news. But I had been so busy with work for the past 3 months. We hadn't been intimate. "It's not my child, is it?" She shook her head to my question. "Then whose is it?" I didn't want to accept it, but I had to ask. "Please, tell me." When I asked with a strained voice, Ava, who had been silent, biting her lip, finally whispered a small reply. "It's Michael's child." "You're joking." Hearing that name, I was speechless. Michael was the name of my boss. It was someone I could never have imagined, and it nearly stopped my thoughts. "Why, since when?" As I asked her, she answered through sniffles. She had been involved with Michael for 2 years. It all started when we invited Michael to our home. After a drinking party, wanting to continue the conversation, we ended up drinking more at our house a couple of times. From the first time we invited him, without much time in between, Ava and Michael had secretly exchanged contact information. The first contact came from Michael, but neither of them initiated the relationship. It just happened. When I asked when they met, it was always on days when my work commitments meant I came home late, like drinking parties. Sometimes Michael would ask me, "Can you go in my place?" The business entertaining schedules were arranged by Michael, my boss. So, he was adjusting the meetings to coincide with days he could see Ava. Learning this fact, I couldn't tell if the shaking was from rage towards Ava and Michael or from shame for not noticing anything. But until recently, we had been discussing wanting kids soon as a couple. Of course, her affair with Michael must have been just a fling. That's what I thought, but she wanted a child, not with me, but with Michael. Ava spoke honestly and said, "I'm sorry," but true to her request for a divorce, she admitted that she was now drawn to Michael. "Harris, you were truly kind as a husband, but kindness alone isn't appealing to me anymore." Hearing those words, I was overwhelmed with tears, wondering what our seemingly happy life together had been for. Even knowing this truth, my love for Ava didn't disappear. However, the shock of betrayal was too much, and I couldn't find it in me to try and rebuild anything. The fact that she was carrying Michael's child was all that mattered. I agreed to the divorce then and there, and Ava packed her belongings and left that night. The next morning, my tear-stained face from crying all night was a mess. I washed my face several times with cold water and managed to go to work. The events of the previous night haunted me, but I tried to focus on my work as usual. Michael arrived at work just in time for the start. Normally, I would greet him, but that day I avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice. "Calm down, stay calm." I found myself chanting internally. But it was impossible not to have flashes of thoughts. Feeling my breathing become erratic, I went to the coffee room to calm down. "Let's have a coffee and relax." As I was pouring the coffee, someone entered the office kitchen. Even without looking, I knew who it was by the suit. A hand landed on my shoulder. "Sorry, man, but Ava chose me." Hearing those words, I glared at Michael. Seeing Michael's smirking face. In an instant, Michael was sent flying into the hallway. Unable to contain my emotions, I had hit him. Straddling Michael, who had fallen on his back in the hallway, I was grabbing him by the collar when others intervened, and that's when I came to my senses. Tears of frustration streamed down my face. Despite the commotion, the company decided not to report to the police after hearing the situation. However, violence is inexcusable. I was terminated, and Michael faced some form of disciplinary action. Afterward, Ava and I officially divorced. I wished them harm, but thinking the unborn child was innocent, I refrained from wishing that way. At that time, I just wanted to cleanly break away and disappear from the scene. Nothing could bring back the wife I was happy with. She was starting a new life with Michael and their unborn child. Becoming unemployed, I should have looked for a new job, but I lacked the energy to move forward, leading to days of doing nothing. Fortunately, I had savings from my bachelor days. I could manage without immediate employment, but the longer I stayed home alone, the more my spirits sank. Realizing this couldn't continue, I decided to go on a journey with no particular destination. I rode trains and buses, gazing at distant sceneries, and stayed at inns I stumbled upon to heal my mind and body. Though it was a solo trip for a change of scenery, my thoughts kept returning to my ex-wife. It was so much fun back then. All the time I spent away from home for work seems pointless now. I didn't do enough as a husband. Despite this, the memories that came with my reflections were all the happy and fun times I had with my ex-wife from when we first dated until now. Maybe I should have a drink. The hotel only provided breakfast, so dinner was up to me. I thought about settling for some canned beer from the convenience store, but decided to go out for a change of scenery. Come to think of it, there was a small restaurant near the inn. I decided to visit a place I had found during a walk earlier that day. I walked through the door and took a seat at the counter. The place was somewhat busy with locals and tourists. That day, I had a couple of drinks in the fish dish before leaving. The next evening, remembering how delicious the local fish dish was, I went back to the restaurant. I had planned to stay at the hotel for one night and then move on, but I liked the scenery around there so much that I decided to stay another night. When I opened the restaurant's door, there were only 2 other customers inside. Maybe it was quiet because it was a weekday or because it was early. I took the same seat at the counter as the day before and ordered a drink first. While absent-mindedly watching the TV in the restaurant and slowly sipping my drink, the restaurant owner, now named Lucy, struck up a conversation. "You were here yesterday, right? Are you on vacation?" I awkwardly chuckled and replied, "Yeah, sort of," when she asked with a smile. "Take your time," Lucy said with a smile and went about her tasks efficiently. Eventually, the 2 other customers left, and I was the only one in the restaurant. Lucy brought over my additional order and struck up another conversation. "You seem a bit down. I hope it's not rude to ask, but are you traveling alone?" "Yeah, I guess so." I found myself unconsciously rubbing the spot on my right hand where my wedding ring used to be. Maybe I drank a bit too quickly that day. Feeling slightly tipsy, I started to open up about why I was on this trip. I hadn't talked about the divorce to anyone, not wanting to worry my friends. I probably just needed someone to listen. And again, the next day, for the 3rd consecutive day, I found myself back at the restaurant. "I'm sorry about last night." Once I started talking, I couldn't stop, and it turned into a long conversation. "That's okay. There weren't any other customers anyway. Oh, you seem a bit more refreshed today." "Thanks to you." I thanked her and took my seat at the counter. I was the first customer of the day since it was early. With no other customers around, Lucy engaged in conversation. We talked about how long I planned to take it easy and how I knew I needed to find work eventually, all while sipping my drink. You don't have to rush back into work if you're not ready. Some say staying busy helps, but if you have some savings, maybe taking it easy and doing some part-time work could help you recover at your own pace. There are many ways to live. I ended up here by going with the flow, too. Changing your living environment might be a good idea. Maybe even consider moving out of state for a fresh start. Lucy's words struck a chord with me. As we were talking, the restaurant door made a noise. "I'm back. I got everything you asked for." She might be in her late 20s. The woman smiled at Lucy and started a conversation. "Thanks, Emily. You're a lifesaver. Was it heavy?" "It was nothing. Do you need help with anything today?" "No need today, Emily. You must be tired, right? Come, have a seat. You're staying for dinner, aren't you?" "Thank you. I think I'll have that." The atmosphere in the restaurant seemed to brighten suddenly. Our eyes met, and I greeted the woman. "Good evening." "Good evening. Welcome. I'll take a seat too," she replied. The woman hung her jacket over the back of the chair and took a seat at the end of the counter. "Oh, she's my daughter. She sometimes buys things we're running out of and helps out when the restaurant gets busy," Lucy explained. "And I make sure to get my meal out of it too." Saying that, Lucy and Emily shared a laugh, their eyes twinkling in amusement at the playful comment. "So, you're mother and daughter. No wonder there's a resemblance," I noted. Emily, with her shoulder-length hair and a smile that suited her cute demeanor, looked a lot like Lucy, especially around the eyes. With no other customers around, the three of us enjoyed a lively conversation. Emily lived nearby but in her own place. She had just turned 30 and worked as a preschool teacher. She sometimes stopped by after work to help out and have dinner before heading home. I introduced myself briefly in kind. "I'm on a sort of sentimental journey," I shared with a laugh. Continuing from the conversation I had with Lucy earlier, I delved into more details. Emily turned to face me, nodding along as she listened. The next day, for the fourth day in a row, I found myself heading to the restaurant again. I was completely won over by the food. The dishes, though simple, were delicious. It was just after opening time when I walked in. Today, Lucy and Emily were both behind the counter. "Welcome." "Good evening. You're here again today," I greeted. "Jep, got roped into running errands for Mom again. She forgets a lot of stuff," Emily joked. Lucy made a face but ended up laughing with Emily. We enjoyed another evening of drinks and conversation. "Harris, you're such a cheerful person. You speak so gently and seem very kind," Emily observed. "I do hear that I'm kind, but sometimes being just kind leads to being alone," I responded. Responding to Emily's words, she quickly covered her mouth with a surprised "oh." But when our eyes met again, the mood lightened enough for all three of us to share a laugh, making me feel a bit more at ease. We then talked about possibly moving. Although I hadn't made up my mind, Lucy's words from the day before had me considering a change of scenery. "Where would you like to live?" "I like the atmosphere and the clean air here, so maybe somewhere nearby," I mused. Both Lucy and Emily enthusiastically joined in, suggesting places as if they were thinking about it for themselves. I had always worked long hours, so I was also considering a change in that aspect. "I'm sure you'll find a great place," Lucy encouraged. "This area is really nice and livable, and, just in case you're interested, there's an opening for a child care assistant. It's at the daycare where I work," Emily mentioned. "Child care assistant, what does that involve?" I was unfamiliar with the role, so I asked for more details. "A child care assistant helps with setting up and cleaning up play areas, mealtime preparations and cleanup, and general cleaning." The position was for a non-regular employee, and no child care qualification was needed. It was more about assisting the teachers and ensuring the children's safety. "I just thought, with your kind demeanor, you'd be really popular with the kids," Emily mused. Me, helping out with kids. I had never considered working in a daycare or preschool, and couldn't quite picture myself in that role. "Wow, I didn't know there was such a job," I replied. "It's just an idea, but think about it, won't you?" Emily suggested. I momentarily pondered the diversity of jobs out there before moving the conversation to another topic and enjoying my meal. Ultimately, after a week's stay at the hotel, feeling somewhat rejuvenated, I decided to temporarily return home. The silence that filled the house upon my return was palpable, yet the space, filled with memories of my ex-wife, felt suffocating. After giving it considerable thought, I decided to leave this town and start afresh elsewhere. Determined for a fresh start, I decided to begin life anew elsewhere. Taking only what was necessary, I left the house filled with memories of my ex-wife behind. I chose a new apartment that came furnished. My destination was the town with the restaurant I'd visited during my trip. After settling in from the move, I found myself suited up. Nervous about an interview for the first time in years. The interview was at the daycare where Emily worked. I had the interview with Miss Taylor, where I introduced myself and discussed my previous job and responded to various questions. Your way of speaking, expressions, and overall demeanor are really gentle and pleasant. Hearing these words helped to ease my nerves a bit. Lastly, could you share why you decided to pursue this job? She asked. Yes, initially, I was unaware of the child care assistant role and couldn't imagine myself in such a position. However, I recalled being favored by younger children and animals since my childhood, and I've always enjoyed caring for others. Though it's a job caring for young children, I was motivated by the thought of contributing to preserving their innocent smiles. I acknowledged to Ms. Taylor that, while I could only imagine the challenges, I was fully aware this job wouldn't be easy. Yet, I assured her that my decision to apply was made with serious consideration. A few days later, I received a call offering me the job. The excitement of what lay ahead was invigorating, yet it also made me feel a sense of responsibility. Once I started working, my tasks were more about indirect care than direct child care, involving cleaning, sanitizing items the children used, and taking care of anything that got dirty. I often found myself working behind the scenes or at a distance from the children and teachers. Day after day, I diligently completed the tasks assigned to me. Then one day, while cleaning items used outside and those covered in mud, a couple of children shyly approached me, asking, "Mr. Anderson, want to play?" Despite my internal reaction of "I'm not a teacher," I was at a loss for how to respond to being addressed directly for the first time. "Mr. Anderson is busy cleaning right now, but how about we play together later?" Emily intervened promptly. The children cheerfully said yes and ran off to the play equipment. "Thank you. It was the first time I was approached like that, and I didn't know what to do. The children are very curious about you, Mr. Anderson. Let's play with them once you are finished." From that day on, gradually, I began to spend more time interacting with the children, playing with them, accompanying them on walks. Every time I experienced the children's innocence, my heart felt warmed. At the same time, I witnessed the remarkable skills of child care workers. They give each child attention and unwavering love. Every day, they create an environment where the children can have a fulfilling time at the daycare. It requires communication skills, physical strength, and sometimes patience, but they always empathize with the children's feelings. It might seem obvious, but it's not something that can be easily done. Moreover, there's a significant responsibility in taking care of these precious lives. Each time I felt this responsibility directly, I became more resolved. "How do you feel about interacting with the children?" Emily asked me after work. "The children's smiles always energize me. It's tough, but enjoyable." I shared my honest feelings, including my usual sentiments. Emily smiled and nodded in agreement. "I'm glad I introduced you to this job. It seems to suit you really well. Have you considered pursuing a career as a child care worker?" When Emily suggested this, I replied half-jokingly, "Do you think I could do it?" But once I was back home, I found myself naturally turning on the computer. What I was looking up were online courses. I opened a page about obtaining a child care certification and read through it thoroughly, from start to finish. Interacting with the children every day and observing the teachers at work had sparked a desire in me to become a child care worker. I knew it wasn't a job to be taken lightly. Still, I wanted to give it my all and try. I enrolled in the online course to obtain my child care certification. Congratulations! With that exclamation, the table in front of me was laid with a cake and party food. Come on, let's take a picture. Smile, smile. I held the acceptance letter in my hand, beaming with joy. Now you're officially a teacher. There's still so much more to learn, I replied. Though it was a slow process, I diligently studied child care through the online course. I could have taken the exam within a year, but I failed my first attempt. I passed on my second try. She even came to my house to help me study at times. She often brought dishes to share, greatly helping me during our study sessions. Though younger, Emily was a reliable senior colleague I could depend on. I passed thanks to you, Emily. Thank you so much. I'm so happy for you. Let's work hard together as child care workers from now on. Finally, I felt like I was on equal footing with her. I was filled with a renewed determination to work harder for the children. I could never have imagined that from the depths of despair, I would find such hope-filled days. A sentimental journey that started without direction led me to this fulfilling life in a place I stumbled upon. Even though I had decided not to dwell on the past, I couldn't help but reflect on it. I needed to be grateful for the circumstances I found myself in. I looked up at the ceiling, fighting back the tears that threatened to overflow. Well, shall we eat? As I tried to lighten the mood, Emily said, "Wait a moment. There's something I've been wanting to tell you once I could congratulate you." Emily turned to face me, looking me straight in the eyes. "Would you go out with me?" I was frozen, staring back at her. The thought of being confessed to had never crossed my mind. I had sworn off love and marriage, thinking I had had enough. I respected Emily as a senior colleague, one of the people I looked up to. But to say I wasn't attracted to her as a woman would be a lie. Emily's kindness and reliability. Her cooking skills that had thoroughly captivated my heart. Above all, I was often saved by Emily's positivity and her bright smile. Even now, having her by my side brings me comfort. I realized I had been suppressing my feelings for her. Of course, my feelings, once kept under wraps, were released, and her confession made my heart race. The slight tremble in my hand as I reached out to her was certainly not just my imagination. And so, Emily and I started dating. I went to inform Lucy of my passing the qualification exam and that I was now dating her daughter. Well, congratulations, you've passed two major milestones at once, becoming a child care worker and getting a girlfriend. Lucy's words made both Emily and me break into laughter. We must celebrate. Just wait a moment, will you? She made my favorite fish fry. It was a time of joy, but my journey as a child care worker had just begun. My first goal is to become a fully fledged child care worker. Together with her, I'm determined to work hard for the sake of the children. Look at your face, it's obvious. No wonder you got demoted. Every day, at my demotion destination, I get sarcastic comments from a female boss who is more than a decade younger than me. Having been demoted from the headquarters to a regional office, I was living a lackluster life. However, one day, an unbelievable project came from the headquarters, and my female boss faced an unexpected problem. The action I took while she was panicking was: my name is Mike, a divorced 53-year-old who was demoted. The sales office I was demoted to was in a more remote town than I expected. Public transportation mainly consisted of buses in a car-centric society. Some employees commute by bike, but for someone over 50, it's quite hard to ride through the countryside, so I commute by bus every morning for 30 minutes. Good morning. As I opened the door to the office, several employees had already arrived. We exchanged brief greetings as we headed to our desks. "Aunt Mike, good morning." The one who greeted me a beat later was Daisy, my younger boss. Daisy is younger but competent and a very beautiful woman. Her name, Daisy, suits her beauty, but the problem is her personality. She has a somewhat harsh character, high pride, and is the type to bluntly say what she wants. She seems to either pity me or mocks me for being demoted at this age, making sarcastic comments almost daily. Whenever something happens, she sighs and says, "Mike, you really are lackluster," commenting on my appearance or personality. Furthermore, upon learning I'm divorced, she'd say things like, "No wonder you got divorced." There's no room to argue back, and not wanting to start any trouble, I just keep quiet and focus on my work. Well, I can somewhat understand Daisy's feelings. As someone in charge of the office, she would want competent subordinates, but here, everyone has been demoted from the headquarters. Either oddballs or employees who messed up at the headquarters. Dealing with such employees must be quite stressful for her. Daisy was always irritable, and that seemed to affect the overall atmosphere negatively. Then one day, our sales office was hit with a troublesome problem. It was more like it was pushed onto us by the headquarters. Daisy, having received a call from headquarters, was at a loss. "Daisy, what's wrong?" "Got a call from headquarters. Seems like they're short-staffed. They specifically asked for you." I was surprised and ended up giving her a second look. If the New York headquarters were short-staffed, they should be able to call for help from a closer office. So why call from a remote place like ours? It turned out the call was about wanting her to join in entertaining an important client. Oh, an important client. Company A, right. I sighed, realizing what it was about. Company A is a major client for us, and Chris, the division manager, insists on having beautiful women accompany him at entertainments. Usually, a nice and pretty female employee from the headquarters would handle the entertaining, but she was out sick and couldn't come to work. With the entertainment scheduled for the day after tomorrow, Daisy was chosen as a substitute. It makes sense since Daisy is famously beautiful. I figured she would meet Chris's standards, but it meant she had to come all the way to New York just for this entertainment. The reason she was chosen probably also had to do with her being in a position difficult to decline. I don't know anything about New York. Daisy wasn't originally from New York, which added to her worries in a different sense. Maybe it's time for me, who grew up in New York and worked at the headquarters, to step in. While bracing for a possible scolding for meddling, I cautiously suggested an idea to Daisy. "Hey, if you'd like, maybe I could come along with you." "Huh?" Her eyes, which seemed anxious, turned to me, and for a moment, they appeared to sparkle. But then, as usual, her brows furrowed with suspicion. "What's this about? You find my trouble amusing?" "No, it's not like that." I carefully continued, trying not to hurt her pride. "Well, back at the headquarters, I had subordinates too. It's tough, having only oddballs for subordinates, right? So, if it's okay with you, let me handle anything related to New York." This offer was made in hopes of improving the office atmosphere even slightly. Honestly, I'd be troubled if Daisy got any more upset, and I really didn't want her taking her stress out on me. Whether she knew how I felt or not, Daisy was silent for a moment before saying, "All right, I'll leave it to you," and she called the headquarters. Then, on the day of the entertainment with Company A, Daisy and I boarded a plane and arrived safely in New York 3 hours later. We caught a taxi at the airport and arrived at the headquarters on schedule. The person in charge at the headquarters looked at me as if to say, "Who are you?" But with time pressing, we get started as planned. "Thank you for being here today. Let's get right to it." The male employee in charge quickly finished his greetings and moved on to the main topic. However, Chris seemed to be in a bad mood, maybe because it wasn't the usual girl. But it was for our major client. We had to make the entertainment a success no matter what. I calmly looked over the situation. Daisy was here just because she's beautiful, so she wasn't familiar with all the project we were proposing. The male in charge was just moving things along without trying to improve Chris's mood. This was bad. Looking over, Daisy seemed to be panicking too. Even while receiving Chris's persistent gaze, she managed a forced smile, trying to find a way to break through. Then, I noticed something. Taking advantage of a pause in the conversation, I spoke up to Chris. By any chance, is that watch the one that was just released recently? It was quite a sudden change of subject, but Chris's eyes lit up as he rolled up his sleeve to show his watch. Ah, you recognized it. It's a custom model of the item released the other day. Impressive. I always think I should follow your lead, always being on a cutting edge, and it really suits you. Of course, it does. I breathed a sigh of relief as Chris seemed to be in a better mood. From there, we went off topic a bit but got into an engaging conversation about the watch. Eventually, the discussion went well, the contract continued, and the project was good to go as planned. Mike, I appreciate today. On the return flight, Daisy thanked me, and I was so surprised I couldn't immediately find the words to respond. It's nothing. If I was able to help, that's great. Let me know if there's anything like this again. When I said this, Daisy lowered her brows and smiled shyly. Sure, I will. I was a bit startled by her rare smile. Then, she went back to her usual expression, putting her hand to her chin as if thinking. But seriously, Mike, you were really good at talking and efficient. Who are you, exactly? Who I am. When I couldn't immediately respond to her sudden question, she asked me, why were you demoted? It was the first time she asked me that. Actually, back at the headquarters, I was on the fast track. People even speculated I'd be a future executive, a so-called elite. But then, a colleague named Harry complained to HR that he was being harassed by me, which completely derailed the career path I had envisioned. Of course, I wasn't harassing anyone, yet. There were incidents like his lunch being found in the trash and screws removed from his chair. Undeniable evidence of bullying. The other staffs believed Harry, and without solid proof, I was demoted. As soon as my wife found out about my demotion, she left me for another man. Her haste made me think she must have had someone on the side all along, which just added to my distress. The day before my demotion, I confronted Harry, saying, look, it really wasn't me. I genuinely want him to understand that I harbor no ill will towards him. However, Harry's response crushed me. I know, but you see, you're just annoying. It was then I realized I had been set up by him. After I finished my story, Daisy looked at me with wide eyes in shock. After a brief silence, she apologized. I had no idea you went through all that. I'm sorry for how I've treated you. The next day at work, I immediately noticed a different atmosphere in the office. A palpable change. During the job briefing in the morning, Daisy said, let's all work hard to improve our performance. She had become kinder to everyone, including me, as if she was a completely different person. Mike, did something happen in New York? Well, no, nothing in particular. Others asked about her change, but I had no real explanation. She must have been inspired by the atmosphere at headquarters and decided to make a fresh start. Regardless, although there was some initial confusion, the office atmosphere improved day by day. This had to be a good thing. Mike, are you ready? Oh, yes, I'm on my way. Perhaps because of the incident in New York, I had gained her trust, and we started working closely together. I couldn't really understand it, but her newfound enthusiasm was somehow endearing, and I threw myself into work to support her, just as I had back at the headquarters. Maybe because the work environment had improved, our office's performance began to skyrocket. As our achievements grew, so did the unity and motivation among the staff. A few years later, our office finally became a top-performing branch in the country, and we're supposed to receive an award from the headquarters for our achievements. There I was, on a plane to New York. Daisy was sitting next to me. "Congratulations, Daisy, you'll definitely be able to work at the headquarters now." We had been summoned by the headquarters after achieving top performance. She was likely to be transferred to the headquarters next. While I felt sad to see her leave the office, I was happy to see our hard work pay off in this way. But Daisy just shook her head, indicating that didn't matter to her. "No, it's you, Mike, who will be working at the headquarters. I've worked hard all this time to get you back there." "Huh?" I was so surprised that I froze. Did I hear her correctly? She worked hard for me to return to the headquarters. I looked at her, but all she did was give a small chuckle. Wow, what a beautiful smile. As I thought completely off topic, I put my hand on my temple. What do you mean?" After a brief silence, she whispered, "That time, on the return flight, I noticed I liked you. Oh, it's okay that we are just a boss and subordinate. I just wanted to do something for you." I wonder how I appeared to her as she murmured this to me. Do you have time after work today?" She looked surprised at my sudden question, but quickly responded with a yes, of course. Though the air was a bit awkward, we made small talk until we arrived in New York. Upon reaching the headquarters, we ran into Harry in the lobby. I stopped in my tracks as he glared at us. It made sense. Thanks to our recent performance boost, I had managed to get a bit of revenge on him. Naturally, our branch being #1 meant we outperformed the headquarters, and Harry was held responsible for this. Well, originally, that would have been my position. Rumor has it, his bonus was cut. Well, it's better than being demoted and getting a salary cut. I didn't want to talk to Harry, but it seemed we were headed to the same place, the president's office. "Hey, Mike, did you say something to President Jones?" "No, I haven't said anything." While on our way to the president's office, Harry asked me in a low voice and then clicked his tongue in response. Harry seemed unsure why both of us were called in together. "Excuse us." We said our greetings as we entered the president's office. Mr. Jones welcomed us with a smile, first praising Daisy and me, and then broached the subject of transferring back to the headquarters. But I was surprised not only that Daisy was mentioned for the transfer, but that I was included too. Harry looked shocked and blurted out, "With all due respect, Mr. Jones, Daisy is one thing, but he has caused trouble at the headquarters." As Harry spoke, the smile disappeared from Mr. Jones's face. Trouble? What trouble was that again? The atmosphere turned tense. Harry seemed taken aback. Ignoring Harry, Mr. Jones turned to me and apologized. "I wanted to apologize to you, Mike. I'm sorry." I was confused. Mr. Jones, you don't have to apologize. I know you're excellent. Daisy called me several times, asking me to investigate the harassment claims between you and Harry. If it turned out there was no harassment, we could confidently bring you back to the headquarters. Daisy did. I glanced at her, and she averted her gaze, looking a bit embarrassed. Mr. Jones continued. Upon further investigation, we found absolutely no evidence of any wrongdoing. It seems like HR dropped the ball here. Harry, who was harassing you? I wonder. Looking at Harry, he was pale and sweating profusely. It seems Mr. Jones had done a thorough investigation. The conclusion seemed to be that it might have been a case of self-sabotage by Harry. Harry was speechless. "Harry, You've mishandled a valuable employee and caused significant losses to the company. You'll have to face the consequences." But Harry was ordered to be dismissed but glared at me without offering an apology. Mr. Jones and Daisy sighed in disbelief. As I mentioned earlier, aside from the trouble with you, he's been causing trouble within the company. I later learned from Mr. Jones that there had been complaints about Harry's behavior towards his juniors. As a result, no one defended Harry, and everyone at the headquarters apologized to me, saying, "Sorry for believing Harry over you." Later, Mr. Jones officially appointed me. He named me the Human Resources Director. I nodded and then requested, "I have one favor. I'd like Daisy to join my department." Daisy was surprised, but Mr. Jones smiled warmly and nodded in agreement. On our way home, I took the opportunity to confess my feelings to Daisy. She blushed from ear to ear and muttered, "It's just cold," before responding with a hug instead of words. And I whispered in her ear, "Thanks to you, my life is back on track." I never thought I'd experience love like this at my age, but it's truly wonderful to be able to share life with someone. The next day, my first day back at the headquarters, I felt nervous. Despite being over 50, I felt like a new graduate. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to my new department. "It's okay, I'm not alone anymore." "Good morning," I said with determination, and was greeted by her familiar voice and smile in return.